Welcome to the Grueling Truth Radio Network. UC Bearcats on the Prowl, starring Mark Fightmaster and James Ernest. Mark, what have the Bearcats been up to?
Well, last week was the dawn of the Luke Fickell era as far as games go against Austin Peay. They won 26-14. That's the good news. They just, it wasn't pretty. And that's okay. We were talking, momentarily there before we came on air, and you said it reminded you a lot of last year. And I agree. They struggled to, what's the best way to say it, develop an identity on offense in that game. Mike Boone, I think he ended up with 100 yards rushing. And
also maybe in the second half, because the first half, they didn't do anything. Second half, they started giving him the ball consistently, and he was moving it. He was doing a great job. Ran me over at one point, but that's not important. It's more of a thing. Because him, and then there was a punt in the fourth quarter that apparently, with watching the replay and all, you probably saw him, he almost get hit, because everybody else that was standing near me go, how did that not hit you?
Yeah.
Sorry. Back to you're right, you were saying they were a lot like last year, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so what we got to do is we got to look for some improvement, and don't get me wrong, I'm not chalking this up as a lost season because of one game. This was Luke Fickell's first game. There were a lot of emotions. There was a lot of tension. They really, really played tight in that first half. They looked nervous. It looked like the players understood how big a game it really was for them. I think I read somewhere that they had like 16 yards of offense in the first quarter. So it's just they played tight, and that's expected. These are kids, playing a game. So some of the what am I trying to say? Like the moment, they got caught up in the moment. They knew how big it was, and they just got caught up in the moment and had a hard time performing at the beginning.
That, and the thing no one will give them credit for is the fact is Austin Peay did get a lot better in the offseason. They ended up picking up, I want to say, around 11 to 16 new players from other Division I schools or mid-majors, that kind of thing, or junior colleges that transferred to them. So they are going to be a lot better this year.
Yeah, and that's a great point. That is an outstanding point because a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's Austin Peay. They were 0-11. But they were better this year, and they're going to be better this year. So I think that's an excellent point that a lot of people are going to overlook because they're just going to say, oh, it was Austin Peay, So, but, there were some encouraging things. Mike Boone, like you said, that was all second half. And he did a good job running the ball. Broke off a couple big runs. The defense didn't play poorly at all. They kept him out of the end zone, and actually kept him in the game with a stop in the red zone and a fumble recovery. So, there's some encouraging things.
I just was upset about the defense. I did not like the amount of rushing yards they gave up. They're right. They did have good pressure on the quarterback. But until the second half, Austin Peay had moved the ball so much better than UC.
Yeah, I'm trying to see how many yards they did give up rushing. They gave up 97 yards rushing overall. So, which, after 1 week, puts them at 96th in the country. Or no, hold on a second. No, hold on a second. That was what they got. I apologize. They gave up 224 rushing yards.
More like it, they gave up a lot. In the first half, it was probably about 150 of it, and 140 in the first half, and then the second half was the rest of that. yeah, mm-hmm. they were moving the ball like crazy. It was quite frustrating.
Yeah, you're right. It's not going to get easier this week. Looking ahead, they got the Michigan Wolverines, and Michigan, I think they ran for over 200 yards last week against the Florida defense that boasts a lot of speed. So, they're going to have to do a little game planning and some scheming and see what they can come up with.
Yeah, I was going to say, the one thing we can boast about is I'm sure we will have better-looking uniforms than those Michigan ones from the other day.
Oh, God, those were horrid.
Yeah, they were.
the all yellows. That was terrifying. You know how I don't like Michigan anyway. Man, that was ugly.
They were. I mean, it's just such a weird combination.
Oh, yeah, and they had way too much yellow. But, that's my fashion opinion. So, hey, what other positives did you see out of the game on Saturday from the Bearcats?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing was, like you mentioned, Mike was just so huge in the second half. Unfortunately, and I don't know why this has become a staple of Cincinnati football, but those stupid little bubble passes and all, and trying to little dink-dunk things, those are just so damn frustrating during the game. What was positive, though, was, I mean, the defense, not the running defense, but the pass defense was really stern. I mean, they were in the quarterback's face. Austin used multiple quarterbacks to try to come up with something different because they did have their running quarterback, and then they had their other quarterback that was more of a passing quarterback. So they did do that well. But other than that, it just, I don't know. Like I said, it was just too much like last year, but as time goes by, it'll get better.
Yeah, and you're talking about that passing defense. I'm looking at the stats. It looks like they gave up about 89 yards passing against Austin Peay, and that's outstanding. I mean, yeah, it's Austin Peay, but it's Division I football, So to hold them to 89 yards is really good. So, but we'll see how that grows.
And actually,
you're right.
The other big thing was the 2 turnovers were huge.
Yeah, and it was the timing of them. They got them when they needed it. So hopefully that's a trend that will keep going forward. Getting the other team, forcing them into mistakes.
Exactly. So as long as they can keep doing those things, I mean, it's gonna be a rough road, obviously. And I'm gonna say his name wrong, but we're gonna call him that anyway. With Spaghetti playing for Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not spaghetti, but
no, might as well be.
Yeah. Let's see. It's really called Speight.
Yeah, I think it's Spate, I believe, is how they pronounce it, at least during the Ohio State game last year. And actually transitioning to Michigan, they did give up a couple pick sixes against Florida. Yeah, and maybe that's something that the defense can hang their hat on. Maybe the ability to get a couple turnovers from them.
True. Yeah, if they can keep that up, because, I mean, that always is the most important part of a game, is whoever wins the turnover battle is more likely to win. So, but with it being on the road at Michigan, it's a big hill to climb.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to walk into an atmosphere that they have not seen. And that, quite honestly, they probably can't even imagine. Michigan's coming off that big win against Florida. And Florida was missing about what seemed like half of their team because of suspensions. But, they played better than Florida. They beat them pretty soundly. And I'm just looking at their stats from last week. They gave up 11 rushing yards to Florida. Yeah, Mike Boone is going to have some work to do, as is the UC offensive line. you know. And Michigan's defense, they've got speed. They are extremely fast, and they fly around. So I think our boys are going to have their hands full, you know. But I think we talked about this in our last show. I'm as interested to see what happens with UC if they get, I said win, but if they get down by a couple scores at Michigan, you know, in a hostile environment, you know, with 100,000 screaming idiots wearing yellow and blue, and you know, let's see what this team does, because we know what Tuberville's team would have done.
Opinion about Michigan fans.
What's that?
Don't be shy. Tell us your honest opinion of Michigan fans.
Yeah. Sorry about that. They rate right up there with Steelers fans in my world.
Yeah.
But you know, I really do want to see, because we know what Tuberville's team would do. You know, and it'll be interesting to see what Fickell's team does. You know, because I hate sounding negative, but I think it's not an if, but a when they fall, when they're down by 2 scores. You know, Michigan
was it like was it the Houston game last year? Yeah, I think it was Houston. Yeah, where they were doing okay, second half, third quarter, whatever it is, and then they were down 2 scores, and then they tried passing too much, and they pushed it, and then back-to-back interceptions for a touchdown. That was painful to watch. I mean, it was awful.
Yeah, they folded up the tents, you know, and so I don't. You know, I mean, I hate sitting here and giving predictions, but I don't see Fickell's team quitting. You know, I really, really hope they play their butts off this week. Now, if they play their butts off and everything goes right and all the breaks go away, can UC win? It's possible. You know, I mean, it is Division I football. You know, there was the Appalachian State miracle 10 years ago in the Big House. But it's going to take a hell of an effort from every single person on that team, including the coaching staff, to get it done.
So that is why I am saying 38-10 Michigan.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm thinking, I saw UC's 34.5 point underdogs, and I saw the over-under is 49. So, you know, I mean, I guess they're predicting like, you know, somewhere in the 40 to you know, or maybe the 30 to 20 or 30 to 15 range or something like that. You know, I don't know. I agree with you. I think they'll keep it within the spread, but mainly because maybe Michigan's called the dogs off, you know, towards the end. I could see it being, you know, 35-7, somewhere in there. You know, what you said, 38-10, so we're not that far off, you know. But this is going to be one of those games where we can say, you know, we saw some growth even though we got our butts kicked. You know, I mean, that's the best way to plainly put it is, yeah, we went up to Michigan, and they beat us like they should, but how did our team react? How did the Bearcats act when they got down? How did Fickell coach? You know, let's give us some kind of glimmer of hope for the rest of the season.
I think they'll bounce back. I mean, I think that's going to help them for the following week to hold Miami game. I think they're going to come into it, and they'll, you know, come into it with something to prove, and then I think they'll do a great job there. But yeah, you're right. This week in Michigan, it's going to be tough, but hopefully they show us, you know, what they're made of.
Yeah, and you know what? And I hate to say it this way, but man, with that first week of football that we had, you know, that first big weekend of football we had, honestly, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, shoot, you know, the Texas A&M UCLA game, you know, the huge comeback. You had Purdue giving Louisville a game. You know, you had two of the biggest point spread underdogs in history beat teams with Liberty beating Baylor and what was it, Howard beating UNLV. So, I mean, you never know, but I got a pretty good feeling, you know.
See,
it's going to be rough.
Is, about the Howard thing?
Yeah.
You know who their quarterback is, right?
Yeah, it's Cam Newton's little brother, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like one of those where it's like, oh, they just some random team. No, it's Cam Newton's little brother, and he's showing that he can be just like his big brother, as opposed to little Vic, which was not anything.
Right, and I read something either the day or 2 days after. I read on Twitter that if you had bet $100 on Howard to win that game outright, just win it outright, you'd have made like $55,000 on your bet.
Yeah, I read the same thing. Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, I mean, obviously I would have never bet that much, but I would have put 10 or 20 on it.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what? You had little Jerry Falwell's little school from Virginia, the Liberty Flames, going into Baylor and knocking them off. What the heck, man?
Yeah, so
that's amazing.
There's been some upsets going on in college football. It's not the same old where it's just, teams go out there and roll over for you.
Right, and so as Bearcat fans, if we're looking for some glimmer of hope this coming weekend, you do have that. You got teams that were easily outmanned that went in and, won or played better than people expected. So what I find interesting is I think, and I'm going off memory, I think UNLV has to go to Columbus this year in their fourth game of the year to play Ohio State. And they just lost to Howard. Wow, that's going to be a tough one for them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, wow, that's a scary thought.
Yeah, so let's talk outside UC. What were your overall impressions from the first week of college football?
I felt there were some good aspects. I mean, obviously the Alabama Florida State game was definitely. I mean, yeah. So what do you think? What are some of your takeaways?
Well, you're talking about that Alabama-Florida State game. Yeah, Alabama won. I mean, Florida State, they're done. I mean, their quarterback blew his knee out. So it's a loss to the number one team in the first game of the season isn't season destroying, but a loss to the number one team in the first game of the season and losing your number one quarterback is extremely hard. I don't know. I was kind of underwhelmed by that game. And plus I think Alabama lost a couple of their top defenders, so things are wide open at the top. We talked about the upsets. Man, that's awesome. Seeing the little teams come up and beat the big guys, which I hope the Bearcats can do this weekend. I don't know, and then just we had Tommy Tuberville's debut on ESPN. That was great. And then just the game's changing. That's something I noticed. I watched Purdue versus Louisville on I believe it was Saturday night. I don't know. Did you see any of that game?
No, I didn't get to catch that one.
Okay. There was big defensive tackle for Purdue. Broke through the line, made a great play on the quarterback. The quarterback was thrown. He went helmet to chest. All right, helmet to chest. 15-yard penalty for roughing the passer. And then they tossed him out of the game for targeting, saying his helmet made contact with his chin.
Oh,
I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, I was livid at the 15-yard, roughing the passer because it was no different than the hit you see 90% of the time, because he just ran through, hit the quarterback in the chest, and it wasn't even late. The game's changing, and man, some of the rules, it gets so confusing because you just never know when somebody's going to get tossed for targeting now.
Exactly. Or what do they catch? That kind of thing.
Oh, God. Tell me about it. I think oh gosh, was it Lance McAllister earlier today was talking about, do you watch NFL, college, or high school more? You know, and predictably in Cincinnati, 6% of the people said they watch high school more, just because those 6% of the people have never officially left high school, I guess. But then it was a pretty even breakdown between college and the NFL. And I started thinking to myself, which do I watch more? I watch college.
Same
I watch
here.
college so much more. I mean, I sat down and watched Purdue play Louisville. I had no rooting interest. I sat down and watched UCLA play Texas A&M. I mean, I watched West Virginia, Virginia Tech. And part of the reason is, like you said, what's a catch in the NFL anymore? You know, what is they seem to arbitrarily enforce rules, and the penalties are a joke. I mean, and maybe you and I were talking about it last year on one of the shows, but my old man has for years said that the NFL is just fixed. You know, they have the teams they want to have win, and that's it. And I always said, oh, come on, that's not the case. There's no way. You're just old and grumpy. But you watch it now, and you're like, man, maybe he has a point. You know, at least in college football, it just seems much more competitive. So, and that's why I watch it.
Very true. I mean, you're right about some of the great games they had, that Maryland-Texas game.
Oh, man, that was a fun one. That was a real fun game. I saw some of the replay of it on ESPN, on the ESPN app. Man, that was a fun game. And, you know, you just never know what's going to happen. I mean, that's Maryland. They have consistently been one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. And they went into Texas and ruined Tom Herman's coaching debut there. So, yeah, you know, I mean, it's a fun sport. There's nothing like college football, and that's why it's awesome to be able to talk about UC football, because it's you know, I think we're at a point now where we're going to see them turn the corner and head back up.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, that's the only direction they can go at this point. Obviously, you know, of course, there'll be people, you know, jumping off the bridge, you know, this week with the whole Michigan thing. But, you know, that's going to happen out of time.
Again, I think it's just you need to look for some sort of progress. You need to look at the team from last year and what happened with them and what happens with the team this year. You know, I mean, obviously my worst nightmare is that Michigan gets out to a big lead. You see, again, folds the 10, you know, and just gives. But I honestly, and I mean this in my heart of hearts, I don't see a Luke Fickell coached team doing that. So, yeah, we can hope. We can definitely hope. I can tell you this. I know Sunday he was studying film because my third grader plays football for St. Ignatius, and they played against his son's school. He's got twin boys in the fourth grade. Mm-hmm. At least they're so big, their driver's licenses said they were in fourth grade. Man, they destroyed my son's team. Just those two. They were killers out there. But I know he wasn't there because I know he was doing some film study because I didn't see him.
That does got to make it rough on him. I mean, shoot, with the the new job and all, not to go see his kids play and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and James, I kid you not, man, they were giants. You know, the way that our school is set up, the way that St. Ignatius' football program is set up, we're one of the only teams in the city that has a third grade team only. So they got put into the small school league because they figure the small schools aren't going to have as many kids, and so maybe the quality isn't that good. But what happens with those small schools is you got a lot of schools feeding in. You're getting a lot of fourth graders from a bunch of different schools. Mm-hmm. And I looked at them when they lined up on the first play, and I was like, holy crap, I don't know that I could tackle one of those two kids. You know, and there's third graders running around trying to tackle them. So it was funny. It was funny.
So, any final thoughts for the week?
You know, I've said it a couple times. I'm gonna beat this dead horse. Look for progress. Look for progress. Ignore the score. unless UC's winning. Ignore the score, see how they play, and compare it to last year's team, because that's the big competition now, is UC against themselves when you're going up against such a big favorite. When you have to go up and play Michigan in the Big House, you got to look for progress compared to the year before. And quite honestly, I don't think I'm going out on a limb to say I think we will see that progress. A 38-10, like you said, my 35-7. Ignore that. It's how do you feel about the way they played, even though they lost? If that's the case, man. So.
No, I know what you mean. I was going to say I can relate to that 100%. Going to the UC women's games last year, when they played Cincinnati or when they played against Ohio State, it's like, you know what's going to happen. But
right.
They are in the game, they're fighting hard, they're still playing, and those are things that they did do in those games. So it's just, things like that give you the optimism that the team is progressing. So definitely applies with the football.
Yeah, and I hate to make it sound negative, like going into this game, oh, man, we're going to get our butts kicked. You don't know for sure that that's going to happen. But if it does happen, you got to look at the bright side. You got to look at it compared to Tuberville's team, So I think, and my hope is when we talk next Wednesday and preview the Miami game, we can both sit there and say, you know what, yeah, they lost, but, man, they played hard.
Exactly.
And there is no such thing as a moral victory. I think several hundred coaches have said that. But, you do have to look for some good in the bad. So we'll see.
So for the UC Bearcats on the Prowl, try to look for the good and not the bad. Thank you for tuning in.
Amen.